All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's Mike, the Chili Dog pilot. Hope you guys are doing well. We're back in the Tomahawk. Today is Sunday. It's actually Father's Day, so towards the end of June, and hope you guys are all doing well. As you can see here through the panel, we have all the equipment back, so the JPI returned, and it is back in the airplane. I did get asked some questions on a previous video where I was flying without the JPI engine monitor. And just so everyone knows, because it was the question that came up, is this is a secondary equipment. I still have my primary engine instruments down below, so it's all for just awareness. It is not required equipment, so therefore I can fly without it in the airplane. So that being said, my last video before this one was the trip that the family took down to North Carolina. It was my nephew's high school graduation, so we flew down for the weekend. I wanted to make a couple comments on that video while we're climbing out here. The first one being, I think that trip really shows the advantage of why we fly GA, because the trip down and back netted a full, just a little over 2.5 hours round, or 5 hours round trip. It was about 2.5 hours each way. Going down was a little bit longer because we got routed around the Philadelphia airspace. Had we driven that same trip, it would have been about 18 hours, so it's about 9 hours each way, and it's a long slug down I-95 through DC, Norfolk, and then through Carolina. So, so that in and of itself, it was a huge time saver because I only had 4 days off, so basically Thursday through Sunday to go do this trip. And it was just great because I was able to see my nephew's graduation, and then also took him flying for a little bit. Had we gone commercial, we could have flown American Airlines down to Wilmington, North Carolina, which would have been time-wise about the same amount of time when you factor in the additional drive to the airport, getting there in time to get through TSA, and be at the airport in time to board and do all those things. And then when you factor in the drive from Wilmington to my sister-in-law's house, I think net it would be about the same amount of time. From a cost perspective, it was about $500 cheaper for us to fly GA than it would be to fly commercially. And that is with only 3 of us flying GA. My daughter had to fly in a little bit earlier because she had to leave earlier for a project she was doing that weekend, so she had to leave shortly after the graduation on Friday. So it was just my wife and my son that flew down. And for comparison, I think the round trip tickets at that point in time when we looked at it was about $500 a person, so that would have been $1,500. And then for the trip down and back in the Lance, you figure about $200 an hour for 5 hours, so that's $1,000. And then the other thing that you can't factor in there is just the flexibility, because we can come and go as we want. So if that's not a good reason to kind of give a nice chime out for why we like general aviation for travel, I think that's a good one. One other bit I want to talk about just a little bit, because it was in the video, but I didn't have, while editing it, I was just trying to get it closed out, but I probably didn't talk through some of the items on the return trip. So if you watch the video, and I'm going to try to link it to the end of this one so you can go back and watch it if you did not already. When I looked at the forecast coming back to Philadelphia, the forecast for that evening was just some light rain and maybe some lower visibility. And that was supposed to hit around the 8 p.m. time frame. We ended up leaving a little bit earlier than we had planned on Saturday, primarily because my son had a get-together at some of his friends he wanted to get to. So we left earlier, which ended up getting us back to the Philadelphia area around 6 p.m., about 7 p.m. actually. And around 6 p.m. or so, when we were about in Delaware, just getting ready to cross into New Jersey, we got a rerouting that was going to take us basically up the east side of the Philadelphia airspace over New Jersey to Robbinsville, and then from Robbinsville to Yardley down to Northeast Philly. So it would have added probably about 15 minutes of travel time to our trip. When you couple that with the fact that a unforecasted convective system was running through, and basically I started seeing it on both my XM weather as well as NexRad weather. It was moving pretty quickly, kind of a north-south running storm that was moving from west to east. And when we first crossed into New Jersey, it was probably kind of parallel to Allentown, Pennsylvania, so probably a good 40 to 50 miles straight line from Northeast Philly. By the time we were near McGuire Air Force Base, that same storm was just starting to hit Quakertown on its way to Doylestown, so that was putting it about 25 minutes from Doylestown. And so at that point, I kind of had to make a decision on, do we stick with the IFR routing, which would probably add time to our trip and potentially put us over Northeast Philly around the same time the storm was coming over Northeast Philly, or do I cancel my IFR flight plan and just go VFR direct? We went with that option for two reasons. One, it was going to get us a straight line distance to Northeast Philly. Two, when I checked NOTAM or ATIS, basically the weather was still clear in Northeast Philly. And so I figured that was the ultimate decision and the safest route for us. Had I not done that, there's a good chance we would have, like I said, arrived at Northeast Philly around the same time that the storm would have arrived at the airport, and we would have had to divert. And the challenge with diverting is, based on the forecast, there was no need to set up a diversion airport, but I most likely would have flown east to one of the Jersey airports closer to the shore, find a safe place to land, and then wait out the storm, which would have probably been a couple hours. The downside of canceling IFR, as I was explaining to my wife, is we no longer have IFR clearances. So if we run into any weather, we'd have to request a pop-up IFR clearance, and we would obviously have to stay clear of IMC conditions. In this case, because the weather was good, and what I was hearing on the radio kind of made it the best choice to go VFR. We did that. We were able to land. I mean, the winds were starting to gust, but as you heard in the radio, further east and further west and north of where we were, the winds were getting really squirrely. We heard a beach baron had to go mist at Doylestown and then find another Philly airport that was a little bit further away from the weather to land successfully. So it was a good example of just maybe what we always talk about when you're flying an instrument is you do need to make some decisions, and decision making is a good part of that safety. And for us, I think getting to the airport sooner before the weather came in was important. Because it was still VFR weather, there was no need to go IFR and take a long route into the airport. Anyway, so that's just quick catch up and a recap of that flight. And then on to other things. I am still working slowly on my commercial license. Basically, I've done a lot of the ground school tests, so kind of what I want to do now is kind of bunker down, prepare for the written test, and get that out of the way. I've been a little more challenged with getting flight time with my CFI to work on some of the maneuvers. I've gone through a few of them with him in the past, so I've been kind of working with him both in my airplane as well as the Archer. So the main maneuvers that I've worked on so far that I'm trying to refine, no particular order, obviously are steep turns, slow flight, lazy eights, which has probably been the most difficult of the maneuvers, and I'm finding myself getting pretty close to being there. Chandelles, and then eights on pylons. So those are the primary maneuvers that we've been working on. Obviously, the other maneuver that I can work on my own is the power off 180s. And then the last thing I want to do with him is steep turns. So Chandelles, eights on pylons, I feel pretty good about. The lazy eights are getting to be a little more challenging, and a lot of it is just finesse. I had a chance the other day. I did some IFR flying with one of my friends that's in the club, and he's working on his CFI, and it was actually nice because he was able to give me some pointers on the lazy eights, and I actually feel like I'm doing a bit better with them now that he and I have worked on it a bit. Okay, so what we're going to try to do now is we're going to do an attempt at lazy eights. Again, the challenge here that I've been finding is just getting everything coordinated to where I am making the full 180-degree turn, as well as hitting my airspeeds and altitudes properly. So we're going to use the river as our guide, and what I'm going to do is start with a left turn, and then we will correct from there. So we're going to start at 2,500 feet. It's a little bit bumpy today, so that might make it just a little more challenging as we work our way through this, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the point here is we will line up with the river at 2,500. I'll put in enough power to get us, roughly close to maneuvering speed. And the key here, as I've been working on it, is really about just real gentle continued changes in pitch and roll. And the biggest thing for me I've picked up is really not trying to rush it. So let's see how this one goes. I haven't done this in a couple days, so there may be a little rust, but we will see how it goes. So I'm actually starting at 2,400 feet. We'll use the river as our guide for our 90-degree point. So we're going to go ahead and start with a slightly left bank. And again, with it being a little bit choppy today, this might make it a little more difficult. So we're going to slowly climb as we enter this turn. We're now at the 45 degree and 15 degrees. Now we're getting to the point where we're slowing down, so the nose should start dropping. And the key for us is to not let the airplane overbank, let the left tendency cross. And there we go, and now we're starting our downward side of the loop. And so what we want to do is slowly prevent it from picking up too much speed, and then continue to unroll as we get to the 180 degree point. So there we did 180 degrees, and we're coming up on level. I'm about 100 feet high, or 200 feet high, so just a little bit higher than I wanted to be. And now we'll start with the right side. So we'll do a right bank as we pull back, and then now with the right turn, we do need to add a lot more rudder because of the left turning tendency of the airplane. So there we are, about 15 degrees. And now, so we're going to start seeing the nose drop. And the key here is as the nose drops, we're going to keep pulling back so it doesn't drop so much that it accelerates through the lower altitudes. Now we're starting to unroll the airplane as we slowly pull back up. And we want to stay coordinated as we do all this stuff. So we're about 15 degrees, so we're going to keep unrolling. There we're level. So that's a better turn to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and just fly straight here and recover. Okay, so roughly going on the 330 heading, as that puts us perpendicular to this road, and we will use that road
traffic,
as the basis
734 Alpha Uniform, turning left crosswind,
for our
runway
turn.
23 Doylestown.
Now the one challenge is it's a little bit turbulent, so we got a little bit of bumps, so that makes this maneuver just a little more, slightly more difficult, because this is a bit of a finesse maneuver, and those bumps will kind of knock you off the pattern. So the goal here is we want to get to about 15 degrees of bank, and at our highest point at the 45 portion of the turn.
34 Alpha Uniform, turning left downwind, runway 23 Doylestown.
And we want to be having the nose pass through the horizon and about 30 degrees of bank, right around the same time that we're parallel with the road on the back half of this 180 degree turn. Okay, so we are at good power setting for maneuvering speed. We are now with the road, we're at 3,500. So what I'm going to do is introduce a slight left bank, and I'm going to start pulling up slowly. So the key to this maneuver that I've really started working on is allowing it just to develop slowly and let the airplane do the work. So we are now coming up on that 15 degrees, and we're kind of at our maximum power. So we just continue to let the nose come on over to 30 degrees. The nose is dropping back down to the horizon. So we're now starting our descent as we go through the back half of the 180 degrees, and we're going to start unrolling the airplane. So now that we're at the 45 on the back end, we're going to start lifting the nose up to arrest that descent, get us back down to 3,500, and unroll the airplane. So we're a little high at 3,600, and we're now level. So we're leveled a little high. Now we're going to go ahead and start the right turn. Now with the right turn, we're going to have to add a lot more rudder because of the left turning tendency of the airplane. So that rudder is going to help pull us through the turn as well as get the nose to drop. So here we are at the high point. The nose is starting to drop. We're coming up on 30 degrees. There's 30 degrees of bank. We're now starting our descent. And we're going to allow the airplane to descend as we continue to roll through. We're going to start pulling up now on the 45 degree point. And we're going to start raising the nose as we come up.
Traffic,
key here is as we pick up speed,
turning final runway 23 Doylestown.
There we are at 180 degrees, about 50 feet higher than we started, so not too bad. All right, folks, so this is a take two. I wanted to come out this early morning and practice some of those commercial maneuvers again, and I figure the best way to do that is early morning before the winds or the turbulence starts picking up too greatly. So my plan for this morning is I'm going to follow a set of power lines as kind of my reference point and use those, and I'll just do S turns more or less all the way down the way until we kind of get some good distance off and get down the way a good bit, and then we'll turn around and come back and do that. And we'll use that as our basis for practicing these maneuvers. And like I said, the Lazy 8s is one of the tougher maneuvers, I think, to get and fine-tune really well. You know, for me, the two keys that I found is really leveraging those reference points and controlling the descent on the back end of the turns, because especially in a fixed pitch prop, you can pick up a lot of airspeed and you can descend below your altitude if you're trying to rush it. So I'm real quickly doing a couple clearing turns to make sure there's no traffic. I do see one aircraft on ADS-B, so I just want to make sure we're clear of them as we start to maneuver. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this power line row as kind of my reference point. We'll continue to maneuver down those power lines, doing S turns, so that way we're getting the practice in both directions. And then once we're done, we'll just basically do a 180-degree turn back and come the opposite way. Hopefully we'll be able to get a decent number of these taken care of before we maneuver. All right, so I have the power lines set. I'm just looking for this one aircraft that's out there about 500 feet below us. And once we're clear of him, we can start our maneuvers. Okay, so we're going to use 25 feet as our reference point. I'm going to pull the power back to about 2,300 RPM. Okay, I got that aircraft in sight, so we'll let him pass, and then we will go ahead and start the maneuver. Going perpendicular to the power lines, if you look out to our 9 o'clock, you can see that those power lines go several miles down the way, so this will be a good opportunity for us just to kind of continue practicing maneuvering and basically doing S turns. So we're just going to do a series of lazy eights until we basically get tired of it. But I want to try to keep the consistency of being at the right altitude and the right level. So as we come up with the power lines, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just add a slight left bank, and then we're going to continue to pitch up slowly, so that way we bleed off our airspeed. And then once we get to about the 45-degree mark, we'll start transitioning from a climb to a dive. That 90 degrees, basically when the nose is facing the power lines, we want to kind of be at the horizon and roughly 30 degrees. Okay, so the other key to this is just allowing this maneuver to develop slowly. So we are now in a nice climb, we're losing airspeed, we're slowly rolling more. Here's about 15 degrees, that's right about at the peak of our climb. Now the nose is starting to come back down, and the key here is continue to apply back pressure so we don't get too much airspeed. We want to be roughly at 30 degrees at the 90-degree point and crossing over. So we hit that, and now we're going to continue to pull back so we do not descend too much, and then we're going to start taking the roll out and leveling out of the climb. Okay, so I just climbed a little bit early there. We are at 90 degrees at the level point. I probably did a little bit slowly on that, so we'll correct the second time around. So again, we're at 2,500 feet. We're going to apply a slight right bank, and then remember with the right turn, one of the keys here is we got to continue to add rudder because of that left turning tendency that will kick in, especially as we slow down. So that rudder is going to kind of help us with the turn. So there's 20 degrees. We're on the way down. We're going to continue to add rudder as we come to the 90-degree point. And there's 30 degrees of bank. And now we just want to continue to descend, get ourselves back to our lower altitude. And then as we pick up speed, we start adding the left rudder again. We're about 100 feet above where we need to be. A little bit more left rudder. Okay, so we finished that one a little bit higher than we wanted to, so we're at 2,600, so I'm just going to let it lose a little bit of altitude. Okay, so a little bit of left bank. We'll continue to pull up, and now we got to add a little bit of left rudder. Continue to climb. We're going to try to get up to about 10 to 15 degrees bank. And that beeping is just my altitude alert warning. Okay, so now we're just waiting for the nose to continue to drop, and we're turning to 30 degrees bank. There we are going through the horizon. Now we're going to start unrolling the airplane. We're going to start pulling up here at the last 45 degrees. Obviously, as we pick up speed, it's going to increase lift, so we just got to kind of monitor that direction in which it's coming up on the lift. So here we are at the 180-degree point. just add a little bit of rudder, keep ourselves coordinated, and there we are, same altitude, roughly same airspeed. Okay, so now we're going to come slightly right bank. I'm just keeping an eye out for traffic as well. And again, right turn, more right rudder. On the left turn, you don't need to use as much rudder. It tends to, left-handing tendencies of slipstream kind of help pull that all through. So with the right turn, you definitely need to use the rudder to get you through there. We're coming up on the 90-degree part of the turn, so we should be roughly 30 degrees of bank. And now we're descending back down. We're going to start pulling up out of the turn as we gain speed, and then also just keep an eye on the rudder for the ball so we are staying coordinated. And we're going to start pulling out, rolling level. And we should be rolling level right at our altitude. So we're a little high, but within the 100 feet. And we'll go ahead and go to the left side. So again, today just practicing this maneuver over and over again, try to get the consistency down of these climbing and descending banks. So I've not had to touch the throttle at all. We just set it and then allow our maneuvering to impact the speed and our descent rate. The nice thing here is with the multiple cameras this morning, you should hopefully get a lot of nice views of the maneuver as we come around on the backside. Yeah, we're just going to tag 2600 since we kind of been consistent a little bit high. So for this one, 26 or 25, 60 is kind of our starting point, so we want to try to end up back there. So slight right turn, again, just keeping an eye out for traffic as well. And we're going to slowly pull up as we increase the bank, and then again, with the right turn, it's primarily rudder. There's very little need to use the elevator to control things. Now, I didn't get as high on my pitch attitude on this one, so we'll have to be mindful of that on the recovery side, on the downhill side. And so we're at the 45, now we'll start slowly pitching up, and as we pitch up, we will roll the wings level. Kind of hear a little bit of the airspeed picking up with okay. So what we'll do now, I feel pretty good with those. We'll use these power lines once again, but we'll line up for steep turns. So we'll do one in each direction. And again, for the commercial maneuver, we want to stay plus or minus 100 feet. Stay coordinated, and we want to be slightly greater, ideally between 50 and 60 degrees. So slightly greater than a 45-degree steep turn. And we'll start with the left turn. So left turn, keeping the rudder in. There's 45 degrees. And we just lost a little bit of altitude, so I'm just pulling back a little more. Should be feeling about 2 Gs. For traffic, we're coming up on the 360 point, so this is where we're going to go ahead and add right rudder, get ourselves turned around, and again, pull back. I'm going to keep our altitude a little bit of wake there, and then we'll level out. Okay, so with the Chandelles, the gist of the maneuver here is it's a 180-degree turn. The first half of the turn is a constant bank of 30 degrees, full power, and we continue to increase pitch to our maximum pitch level. And then at the second half of the 90-degree turn, or second half of the 180-degree turn, so the back 90, we are keeping the pitch and then unrolling the airplane. So that way we are wings level near our minimum maneuvering speed at the 180-degree point. Okay, so we're going to start at 2,500. This maneuver will get us a lot of altitude. So we are going to put it in for maneuvering, roughly around 90 to 95 knots, which is our maneuvering speed. Okay, so we're going to go 30 degrees of bank, full power, and then we're going to continue to increase the pitch until we get up to about 15 degrees. And then now that we're at 15 degrees, we're going to hold this pitch and slowly unroll the airplane until we are wings level at the 180-degree point, which would be 060. Keep it coordinated. And then once we reach the 180-degree point, we're going to go ahead and lower the nose and just maintain the altitude we're at. So that's 3,000 feet in this case. And then the altitude that you gain is arbitrary, but the point is you want to maintain it. We're going to continue to gain speed. Then once we get back to maneuvering speed, we'll do it to the right. Okay, we're going to do the turn to the right now. So 30 degrees of bank, full power, and then we're going to continue to pitch up to, again, about 15 degrees. There's 15, and we're going to slowly unroll the airplane. We maintain this 15 degrees of bank. And the goal here is to get to the 180-degree point, which is 240 degrees, wings level, and nearing our minimum speed. We're almost there for both. And there's wings level, so about 3,500 feet. So now we're going to just keep this altitude as we gain airspeed again. And obviously, with the right turn, we just got to be very mindful of the rudder, because as we slow down, that left-handing tendency really kicks in. I want to thank all of you guys for watching, especially those of you who have been around since last year. As I mentioned in that North Carolina video, June 7th marked the 1-year anniversary that I started doing videos, kind of for other people. I had done some videos where I just did some landings and approaches, but not really talked to anybody. So for those who've been around and have been supporting us, or me, I really appreciate it, and we will continue to put videos out there, and hopefully get some videos out there that all of you can enjoy and find useful. So as always, I appreciate your flying with me. Continue to give me feedback. I really enjoy the interchanges with those who do, whether it's specific to the flight or just questions in general. Always enjoy the interaction with others on here. So until then, take care.